no doubt the better option. Back to arguably the best political tag team on TV, Dr. PLO Lumumba, Dr. Barrack Muluka in the House, talking impeachment going forward. You were explaining something before I cut you off in the break. 1933, 1934. Light of the long knives.
Very, very briefly. It's about, or was about, purging. It was about consolidation of power. It was about getting rid of divergent and dissenting voices. And the world remembers that the period 1920 to 1945, that not just Germany, but Europe and the world was dominated by the Nationalist Socialist Party of Germany. The year 1932, November, they come to power with a minor minority. They go out of their way to raid the opposition, to expand their numbers. Then they start purging those who have got different perspectives, different views, different positions. They go on to engage, especially in the period June to July 1934. That process that was superintended by men wearing masks, abducting people, disappearing people, murdering people. That is the process that has gone down in history as the Night of Long Knives. And in a very dramatic happening, the leader of the opposition, a gentleman called Rom, was arrested by the German leader himself and tried in a kangaroo court by the German leader himself. And he was sentenced to either commit suicide or to be shot, firing squad. Of course, he rejected committing suicide, and he was shot down by the kind of shadowy characters that we are seeing around. The other day we were telling the good man from my village, what is his name? the acting IG. Yes. Yeah. We were telling him that he should produce people before the courts. What people was he going to produce before the courts when the people arresting them were not under his command? That there is a parallel command. So this purging, to bring it back to the impeachment that we are talking about, is about consolidation of power. It's about the creation of a strong leader, and a strong leader who himself whips people into line. The way you are saying that everybody is standing up and is saying, I vote yes. I vote yes. And as they are saying, I vote yes, Big Brother is watching you.
PLO, is this Daniel Arap Moi 2.0?
There are parallels in many ways because, as Barrack says, there is a consolidation of power. And things are happening in a manner that is very interesting. He's talked about, and we've talked about, the Night of Long Knives. You can also compare this to what happened in Haiti, Jacques-Claude Duvalier and the Tonton Macoute. And the whole idea is that you are trying to consolidate. And one of the things that we must not lose sight of, if you talk about the opposition, do you see in some way the re-emergence or the reassembly of what used to be the Pentagon?
Oh, yeah.
You can see that.
Absolutely.
So that if you look at the deputy president, in some ways is an outsider. The old group is coming together and he is singing out of tune. And if you are singing out of tune, then you must, in the nature of things, be eliminated so that there is a new symphony. And that new symphony demands that things are done in a particular way. You only have to look at the members of parliament who a few months ago were in the opposition and were very violently opposed to this administration. Now they are singing, as I said in my letter, they have their hallelujah moment. And in that hallelujah moment, the head of state now can do no wrong. And that in itself is telling. And when you ask the question, there is a rehash of what we have seen before, a rehash of a system that brooks no nonsense, a system that wants everybody to sing the same song, and if you don't sing the same song, then you will be dealt with and dealt with firmly. And remember that the opposition that has been incorporated, some of the members declared themselves that they are cows and that they do the bidding of their leader, and their leader is alive and well in the new dispensation.
Speaking of your letter, PLO, you wrote a letter to the president, and you've done that before.
Yes.
You wrote a letter to the previous former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and now you sent a letter to this president. And basically what you said is Kenya is headed in the wrong direction. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
That's the essence.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
And my view is...
And this was before the impeachment, by the way.
This was before the impeachment.
Yeah.
And the gist of my message is that when you are in a hole, you stop digging. And when you have a citizen who comes out and out of patriotic duty says, let us hold. And I remember this. When I was writing the letter, I remember the night of the killing of Julius Caesar and the letter written by a man called Artemidorus. And he's saying, he's telling his leader that there are things that are happening in the country which deserve attention. You are telling your leader that the lecturers are on strike, that the teachers are on strike, that the workers in the counties have not been paid. You are telling your leader that agriculture is not doing well because of fake fertilizers. You are telling your leader that our airport is being leased out or being sold in a manner that is not proper. You are telling your leader that interest rates are not favorable to the business environment. You are telling your leader that the leadership in the neighborhood is not happy with Kenya and we are losing our national leadership position, and that therefore there is a time for reflection, not a time for orgastic chest thumping by acolytes. And what one therefore expects is that that message, however irritating it is, ought to be distilled, that the messenger must be ignored and the message must be embraced and accommodated, and to the extent that is useful, certain things ought to be done. That is the spirit in which one is writing a letter. And such citizens, and there is no shortage of them. When you look at the Twitter spaces and other spaces, there are citizens who are tweeting and writing on a daily basis because they are saying, this country that we have, we want to preserve it for this generation and generations yet to be born. And in my view, it behooves a leader who is a trustee to take such messages clearly and to understand them in a proper manner and to begin to implement. Because if we don't, then we are pushing the country down into the abyss to the detriment of all. That is the spirit.
And we're doing it eyes wide open.
We are walking as if we are somnambulists, sleepwalkers, and we are moving as if we will be spared. When the Titanic sinks, all in the first class and in the decks will go down. There are no lifeboats.
No. By the way, any response from State House, from Ikulu?
I didn't expect it, but I believe that the message has been received.
Barrack, I have a question from Fred Obachi Machoka.
Good.
The blackest man in Black Africa.
Very good.
And his question, I hadn't thought of this, but it's a really good question. He says, assuming the impeachment fails, right? What happens then? In other words, let's say if it doesn't pass muster, I think he needs 17 votes from 17 votes to defend him or something from Senate. I'm not sure.
Perhaps slightly more, but
Okay.
I think let us address the material question regardless. First, from where I sit, I reflect from, and I speak as Barrack, as a Kenyan citizen, as an observer of the social and political scene. I imagine that there isn't much merit in pushing this thing beyond where it has reached. If I were one of the deputy president's advisors, I would tell him, and this is my honest opinion, having watched him on Monday and having watched him yesterday on Tuesday, that he has made his case, he has made his point. First of all, he was actually taken to the court of public opinion unheard. He had not been given the opportunity to state his side of the argument, and the public was being invited to state whether he should be impeached or not be impeached on the basis of a one-sided argument, and he thought it wise. And I take this view that his meeting on Monday, his press conference on Monday, was well advised. It was well advised because, as we have said, this matter was a fait accompli ab initio. And therefore, the only useful thing to do was to make the public to get a clear picture of the other side of that story. And he gave that picture pellucidly on Monday and yesterday. The celerity of mind was there, the felicity of diction was there, the coherence of substance was there, the substantiation of fact was there, and we would say with the poet that the deputy president rode a coach and 12 horses through the impeachment motion. But it did not matter. And it will not matter going forward. In any event, if the impeachment does not work, and your boss does not want you to be his deputy, and you are in that space where he's the one who gives, who allocates functions to you, roles to you, you probably don't need to stay there. As the average person in the street that I consider myself to be, I have bought 75, 80% of what the deputy president stated to the Kenyan nation over the past 2 days. I know that he has got his own very fundamental weaknesses. Sometimes he comes across almost as obtuse, almost as obnoxious, almost as completely being driven by the power of what can only be described as a turpitude. Turpitude, just about the worst possible.
Turpitude.
But I think...
But that's said and done. Hold your
yes, I
horses
will.
for a moment.
Yes.
That's said and done. Justice is justice. It doesn't matter what this gentleman has been saying about shares. And yes, he was right when he talked about shares. I'm aware that my own home region was promised 30% of government. Now, 30% of government, and it's written very clearly to ANC and Ford Kenya, and if you are doubting that it's about Western Kenya, and I saw somebody trying to inveigle the public and saying there's Ford Kenya, I don't know where and where and where. There are other clauses which the MPs have been very conservative about. When we say that 1,000 kilometers of bitumen roads will go to Western region, that such and such factories will be built in the Western region as part of the promissory note in this contract. Why haven't we been told about how many bitumen roads will go to Kisii, where Ford Kenya at that time was also holding sway? So I think the done thing for Mr. Gachagua ought to be, that he has made his case. We have heard. I believe him. And if I believe him, I'm sparing 20 to 25% of the marks because of the secret and disclosed things which he agreed on with his boss.
PLO.
I think there is a very pointed question by Obachi Machoka. Suppose it fails. If it fails, then he will continue to be in office and will hold a sinecure position. There will be no roles assigned to him. Yeah. But I believe he thinks that to remain in office is also immunizing himself against other pains that could be visited against him. Because there is the fear that once he leaves office, then he will be open to be punished by different institutions. So that, I think, is one of the things that plays in his mind. He could also go into oblivion so that politically he will be dead. So it is important for him, as I see, that if it fails, he'll continue to be there, he'll continue to attend rallies, he'll continue to appear to hold some power, which power will keep him in the public arena, and in many ways, as I've already indicated, will immunize him against prosecution. And I'm not saying that he's immune from prosecution, but the fact that he holds that office, people will be slow, and institutions will be slow to go after him. But as Barrack has rightly said, I think the determination is there. And even if what he says is right, nobody is interested. You can see that the Parliament was not interested in his side of the story. I don't think, and I don't want to anticipate this debate, but the enthusiasm that I see on the part of the Speaker of the Senate tells me that there is need, that Dracula is waiting. And they want to eat him alive, as it were. I pray and hope that the Senate will acquit itself by according him the opportunity to present the case and ask itself whether the constitutional threshold has been met. When I listen to the parliamentarian, somebody saying, he disrespected us, and therefore we are going to ensure that he goes. That the Constitution does not make disrespecting members of Parliament, National Assembly, a ground for impeachment.
Especially when they call themselves cows.
Yeah, particularly if they do so.
And they have subjected themselves to an exercise that is almost the equivalent of cattle rustling. They've been rustled.
They rustled.
And from one camp and headed into another camp.
And even the decorum with which some of the members of Parliament, members of the National Assembly conducted themselves. In an impeachment process, I would have loved to see the Speaker of the National Assembly give due weight to some of the things that the individual, Mr. Gachagua, was putting on the table. But you could see the impatience on their faces when he's playing the video to say that these offenses that I'm being accused of have been committed by others without consequence. Why is it that I'm the one who is receiving the arrows? They are not interested. And Fred, the position is, if he survives, but I think he has the chance of a snowball in hell.
Absolutely.
Speaking of video he was using, did you notice it was all Citizen television footage? You noticed?
You
it
are
was
doing
not
good
lost
work.
on me.
You are doing good work.
I don't know whether he speaks well for you or he doesn't.
I'm just saying.
No, you are doing good work.
just saying.
You're doing great work.
Speaking of which, this is what he once said. I think he was saying, you know, what I'm doing, I'm just emulating what my boss is doing. I think that's a soundbite.
Yes.
Monica, do we have it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. If the House took it that I say the House is a theater of the absurd, I was talking about this specific charge of undermining devolution by holding meetings to fight alcohol to be discussed in this House. That, to me, is what I thought that moment. If it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that will be the theater of the absurd. President William Ruto, my boss, and I have been calling out senior government officials when they fall short of expectations. The Director General of the National Intelligence Service is no exception. He's not above the law. he's accountable to the people of Kenya for his performance. And I have had an argument that we should not call out those in the security sector. I would like you to play the next video.
We have the most incompetent Inspector General of Police, I think, in the world. The most incompetent in the whole world. His incompetence may not necessarily play out when things are working, but when things get to a head and you need some decisions to be made, I can tell you for sure, the gentleman we have as an IG cannot make any decision.
Honorable members, that was President William Ruto as Deputy President criticizing IG Mutiabai, DCI Kinoti. Rigathi Gachagua has learned his job from his boss. In accordance with Article 2 of the Power Sharing Agreement, ANC at Fort Kenya would have a 30% share is a word, of the national government positions. This drives my utterances about shareholding. It is embedded in all these agreements. I want to confirm that I have tremendous respect for Kenyan women.
PLO, let me ask you this. If the impeachment goes through and he's sent home, that means he cannot stand for any public office for 10 years. Am I right or wrong?
Of course, the Constitution is clear that when he is impeached, then he is ineligible to hold public office.
Good.
And that will be a death knell for him. So that is the reason why I'm quite certain that Mr. Gachagua will not accept the counsel, unsolicited counsel of my good friend Barrack. He's going to fight it to the very end. He is going to fight it in Senate. He's going to fight it in the High Court, to the Court of Appeal, and to the Supreme Court, because there'll be a mark of Cain on his forehead. And that mark will ensure that he does not participate in the politics of this country almost until he goes upstairs to the Mecca. Yeah. And if I were him at this stage, because he has chosen to fight, if he was to resign, it would have been a little earlier. But I think right now, he has, as the saying goes, as William Shakespeare, I think it is Macbeth, that he has waded so deep into blood that to go back is as tedious as to go forth. So he must go forth to the very end.
Keep going.
And let the chips fall where they may.
Where they may.
And I think it is also important for this country. And that is why I think that it is important that we listen to him in the Senate. I've listened to my good friend Paul Mwite making early arguments in the case I say, and Barrack has also alluded to it. At what time was it proper to seek public opinion or public participation? They should have waited until he made his case on the floor of the National Assembly, so that the people will have heard him and heard the mover of the motion, but they put the cart before the horse. And as we said a little earlier, the choreography was a choreography that was designed to achieve an end, which end has been achieved in the National Assembly. But as we know, the journey is not yet over.
Barrack, would you resign if you were him?
At this point, look, we heard a lot about a man who was described as a black man with a very black heart. Never mind the racist undertones in that sentiment. We heard a lot about very nefarious things which he's alleged to have done. And the public had a certain picture of him. He came out on Monday, he spoke, he made his statement, and by the time he was getting to the National Assembly, he had accumulated a reasonable fund of sympathy and empathy from right-thinking Kenyans. The best thing he could hope to get out of this whole exercise is to clear his name. And in my view, to the best possible extent, he has cleared his name.
I don't know which.
You look at,
I don't know what you were watching, Barrack. I don't know what you were watching. 282 people.
It doesn't matter if you are talking about voting automatons that are mobilized Muppets that are sitting on the strings of the puppeteer, and he's pulling the strings, and people who have been saying that I'm not going to vote yes are voting yes.
Did you just call them Muppets?
Yeah, of course, they're Muppets or puppets. And there's
you know, when my good friend, and I'm using the word friend rather loosely, I've never met the deputy president at all, says that it is a theater of the absurd. It is a theater of the absurd. If you look at the conduct of the members, they were not conducting themselves with due decorum. And I am suggesting that what Barrack is saying has merit only in an environment where truth is given pride of place. But these were individuals who had taken a position. And there is a beautiful Kiswahili saying, anaye kutusi hakuchagulii tusi. Whatever comes to the mouth, that is what they spew out. They had taken a decision, and whatever truth that the deputy president was bringing forth to them, in their mind, it was useless. It was an exercise in futility. My hope, as I've already indicated, is that when he appears before Senate, the senators who have had the opportunity of going through this process when they are dealing with governors, I hope they listen to him a lot more keenly. I hope that they will listen to him and understand some of the things that he's saying so that they are given their due weight. But I suspect I'm hoping against hope.
Hold on hope.
Yeah. One of my favorite Swahili sayings, if I could piggyback on yours, is nyani hayoni
kundule kwa mapevu na makinda.
You know, he just nailed it. Let's take a quick break, come back. There's still more to talk about. Possible replacement. Are there possible replacements? From Kindiki to Waiguru to... Well, let's talk about that. It's a very short break. Don't go away. We're coming back. Nyani Hayoni? Take it live. We'll be back in a moment.